they are alternative to commercial banks.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened is that we needed to do some kind of reform of our credit union acts in order to actually support what the credit unions are doing. Otherwise, what you would have is credit unions being so large, and if they fail, they become a tremendous financial burden. They could crash the economy.
I see what you're saying.
So you're trying to stop this from happening. So you don't want them to crash the economy.
As a banking institution, in that capacity is where the report goes. In the report also, there's a favorable acknowledgement of the government's intention to clean up corruption. And I wonder if you were surprised that the specifically procurement legislation was not identified. Implied, but not identified.
No, they actually did mention procurement, so they did mention procurement a little bit.
I saw clean up corruption, and I implied from that they were included. That I did not see that part specifically, so it was indeed addressed.
Yeah, they did mention it. Well, not much they said, but what they mean is that the government and the legislative agenda need to put something about procurement legislation, because, as you know, procurement is very important. That is, for the listeners there, it's about the contracts and how contracts are awarded. And therefore, we needed to have some agreement as to how we actually want to award contracts. So that's an important thing that I mentioned, actually. But, of course, it's something like in passing, because remember, this is just a letter from the IMF.
Yes.
This is not the actual Article 4 consultation yet in detail. But this is just there to alert us as to the kinds of things they will be putting in the Article 4 consultation.
One of the good things here, Dr. Anthony Birchwood, who is my guest, going to be with us for a while. We've got some other areas to go into, but I want to complete the discussion on the IMF side of it. One of the areas that I find, and maybe I should ask you, I take some comfort, all things considered, in that it is not a negative letter. It is an appraisal that says that exactly what the Prime Minister said. We've got time to take the remedial medicine. It is not to the stage of us in a must-take the bitter pill situation.
Yeah, basically what the letter is saying is that we agree, well, remember this is a new government in office.
Yes.
So we agree with the direction you are going, and we agree with your legislative agenda. And so they're supporting that, and we would like you to take some more drastic measures, and that included the same make work schemes I was speaking about. So you had to reform that. Next thing they mentioned is the fuel subsidy.
Yes, the fuel subsidy, indeed. Yes, they're moving towards removing that is what they're saying.
Well, it's typical IMF parlance. They have been arguing this for a long time, since the 1980s. When we went on a standby arrangement back in the late 1980s, and that was one of the conditions that we should remove fuel subsidy.
What has been what is really the thinking? I mean, outside of the cost of living, which is very important, appreciating if you went ahead and removed those subsidies, what are the arguments against removing those subsidies?
Well, that is why many oil-producing countries are very reluctant to remove subsidies, because of the fact that there's a fear of inflation. That when you remove these subsidies, the price of transport increases, and everything else increases after that, because price of goods will increase because transport prices increase. You also find that in these OPEC countries where they have strong fuel subsidy as well, they are afraid of it as well. So many countries are reluctant to remove fuel subsidies because of that. And I should say this too. Look at the advanced industrialized countries. They continue to maintain subsidies, agricultural subsidies.
That's true.
So while the IMF come in and tell us we should remove all fuel subsidies, advanced industrialized countries can maintain their agriculture subsidies.
Well, the truth about the IMF is that when they come to developing world, they have one prescription, and when they get to Europe, they say, "Oh, this is not exactly working out the way we planned it. Why don't we change the conditions up here for these guys up here?" I mean, they have done this already. That raises, as you mentioned, the situation with the IMF. They were for floating the dollar. Talk to us about that. The situation with the devaluation you mentioned, I alluded to that earlier. And at one time, there was what was called a dirty float. Explain to our listeners what that means and why that changed with a decision taken by the former governor of the central bank.
Well, the dirty float is basically a managed float. And the managed float is what we have. What that means is that you say, yes, you float in a currency, but you're trying to keep the float within a certain band, a certain range.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what they call a dirty float, because you're not fully and freely floating the currency, because you're trying to keep it still within a certain range.
I got you. The IMF wants you to do a total float. Explain.
Well, the orthodoxy is that you should either have a fixed exchange rate or a freely floating exchange rate, totally freely floating. So that's the orthodoxy. Now, we decided that we do not want a freely floating exchange rate because of the fact that we are afraid that you will have total depreciation of the dollar, which is what happened in Jamaica. So Jamaica, their exchange rate was almost like 2 Jamaican to 1 US at one time.
That's right.
And then they floated, almost a free floating. And what happened in the end is that the exchange rate is now about 100 and something Jamaican to 1 US.
Yep, everything floated away.
Yeah, so that's the difficulty when developing countries like ours try to do a free float.
So what decision was taken by the central bank that has exacerbated this situation with foreign exchange? Speak to us on that issue, please.
Well, essentially what happened here, remember, we had to maintain a stable exchange rate of 6.3. Well, yeah, apparently stable exchange rate around 6.3 to 1 US. What happened is that the central bank decided that they will change the market microstructure. So they changed the market microstructure by including other companies that were not banks as licensed foreign exchange dealers. And these companies now, who were not banks, became licensed foreign exchange dealers. People start to think that this might destabilize the exchange rate a bit. So that's how the bank started off. Eventually, they backed down so that these same licensed foreign exchange dealers, they now have a smaller allocation of the foreign exchange. And when I say licensed foreign exchange dealers, I should probably tell the viewers what you really mean. Or listeners, sorry. What do you really mean by licensed foreign exchange dealers?
Please do.
Yeah, what we really mean is that licensed foreign exchange dealers supposed to have the first allocation of foreign exchange before anybody else. So commercial banks usually reserve to be licensed foreign exchange dealers because they have the first allocation of the foreign exchange, and then they will redistribute it by selling it to the public. So what happened here was that you had certain companies, 3 of them, who became licensed foreign exchange dealers alongside with the commercial banks. And that was seen as causing shortage in the availability of foreign exchange because these non-bank institutions now able to earn foreign exchange as first priority. And then they come back on the market and buy foreign exchange afterwards. So that was the problem why this foreign exchange situation had arisen. And then many companies, as you know, complained that they could not get foreign exchange at all. So that was the other problem. So therefore, there was an apparent foreign exchange shortage.
We have a very difficult situation right now. What is the internationally accepted benchmark for having adequate foreign reserves?
Well, you don't really... The standard in CARICOM, right, is that we try to... The standard is that foreign exchange reserves should be about 3 months import cover.
And where are we now, we Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, we very blessed, blessed and highly favored. We actually reached about 13 months of foreign exchange cover.
Yes, I wanted you to say that because I looked at the number and I said this is going to temper rather the urge to say the sky is falling. It is not what it used to be, but the sky is not exactly falling if you've got 13 months when the norm is 3.
So in other words, we are filthy rich in terms of foreign exchange reserves. The problem we really had was just the allocation of the foreign exchange, so that those who really need it will get it. Yeah, so that was really the problem. But we are okay in terms of import cover. However, let us not get too carried away with that.
Indeed.
Because you see, this is fickle in a way. Make a huge demand for foreign exchange, and you will have wiped out your import cover.
I said it should temper. I never said we should get fool free.
Definitely.
Dr. Anthony Birchwood, let's talk about this issue you're talking about. This decline in energy reserves, energy revenue is a very difficult situation. You said earlier that we and it's commonly agreed that we're not going to get back to those levels. So my question is, if the IMF, and I know the World Bank also opined that come 2 years from now, which is 2 years from now, that you should have some sort of stability. Around what kind of figure are you expecting? One, and then as a continuation of that, what kind of pegging should budgets be looking at? That is to say, expectation of $45 a barrel. What kind of numbers should they be looking at from the world trend as you see it?
I will say, just purely in economic terms, not in politics, terms of politics, but in pure economic terms. Your pegging should really be closer in range with what you could afford. So therefore, you should peg closer to your energy prices and the trend in energy prices. However, you have to deal now with the real economy, and that includes expectations of the public. So since you have to deal with public expectations, you don't want to drastically cut your budgets just like that, because it will cause a lot of shocks, retrenchments. Like, for example, our public service is still the major employer in the economy. And since they are the major employer, if you make a radical cut in your public service expenditure, it can cause retrenchments coming from the public service side. And since you have retrenchments in the private sector, the retrenchments in private sector, you don't want to double the problem by causing retrenchments in the public sector just like that. Although I think it's inevitable that you will have to have retrenchments coming from public sector, but you have to find a way as best as you could of gradually easing the economy.
Drunk or sober, no matter how you turn it, you see pain coming down the line, really.
Yes, we have to get some pain, unfortunately. I can't smile about it because I should tell you that in other developing countries, they're going through the same thing. In oil-producing countries who produce far more volume of oil than we do, they are also going through serious problems right now. I should tell you, too, what is really happening is that you have a war going on. The war is actually between oil producers and shale gas producers, or shale energy producers. And this war is that the key oil producers in the world, like Saudi Arabia and so on, they are trying to drive the shale producers out of the market.